Good afternoon and welcome back. So I thought I'd give you a quick update. Since the last video, I've started gluing together the main bus with the production bus. And it's basically been a game of cut and shutting until things fit. But it looks kind of neat. It looks good on the map. Let's have a look closer up. Okay, so basically I have a bus at the top, which is all the stuff needed for production and science, and then a bus at the bottom, which is the bus for making circuits. And the items being made below are all the commodity items, so things like engines, batteries, circuits, and so forth. And then on the end, we've got a couple of special items, drones and modules. So they're all things which you don't really care about, which you just want the system to take care of. Everything I don't care about is below, everything I care about is above. So what I've been doing since last time is things like this. So the batteries here are feeding up, they're skipping all the way over and then feeding onto the production bus. I've still got the copper iron feed here mocked in. Let's fix that while we're here. So this is a trickle of material. It's not even a full yellow belt. Oops, that was a bit low. So we'll need to take it from here. Yeah, that's connected. So we'll need to take in some copper and some iron, and we can do this, I think, I think there's enough room. Okay, so we would want to do that. That would bleed material onto the steel belt. So let's skip the steel. And also while we're here, figure out what the maximum jump is. If that's the maximum jump, we want to end up there, then let's start the jump here. There we are. I like doing maximum jumps where possible with undergrounds. It makes the bus look tidier, but it's also just feels as if it should be more efficient. I have no idea if it really is more efficient, but it feels like it should be. Okay, so we're gonna have a split belt, so let's put the split in there. Okay, and then we need the way I'm doing this is I'm giving the things on their own section priority. So this has priority over anything else going over its own section. And then from then on, things go under. Okay, so we now need to bring the iron down to there, which means we need to make some room for the iron. There we are. And let's take it off this bottom belt. It's the first thing to come off, and it's just such a tiny amount of material we don't really need to worry about anything. Okay, so let's make a hole in the coal. Remember, we have to use a blue splitter for blue belts, otherwise you don't get the throughput passing through. Right, even if you're only taking off a little bit of material like this. Okay, and then we may as well just drag this down. There we are. Oh, research is finished. Let's do another one of those. The reason I'm choosing follow a robot count is because it uses all 7 potions. So that makes the factory work at full speed. Okay, so this is now coming down. I'm just going to watch it go down because I've occasionally had belts that haven't quite joined up. And of course, because it's yellow, it's taking forever. Right, down it goes. And down to the bottom. Brilliant. And it didn't actually matter which way round these were. Nothing was relying on sides to work, but I'm just going to swap that over to match. Okay, so that's great. We're making batteries again. So this is basically what I've been doing. I haven't mocked in, I've left the fluids mocked in, I haven't filled them in yet at all. So that's really the next big job. So batteries come up, and what I've been intending to do is run things in both directions. as I said before, I'm going to add a new making area on here for military and things to do with uranium. I might do the uranium processing below, since that counts as boring. But then things like uranium ammo would get built above. So there might still be some engines and things needed over here for various things I make. Okay, so the normal engines feed in and then immediately go down on a splitter. Then batteries are on the bus. And the next thing to happen is green circuits. Okay, and you may notice that since last time, the green circuits have been upgraded to a blue line. So what I've been doing, basically, is running the factory flat out with this research going, and seeing what potions aren't being made, and then trying to figure out why. So these potions are now lacking copper. I haven't got enough copper on this line here. I'm bringing in a single line of copper. There's some being split off. Right, our belt is pulling off a bit more here. And ultimately we're dragging off a bit of copper down for the batteries. Now that is enough copper to kill our factory, because we now need to consume slightly more than one yellow belt to keep that all going. So this is the kind of thing I've been tuning. So I will go back and find a solution for this, which may involve pulling the copper off the circuits bus. But I mean, that will be fine because I'm doing balancing. So as long as I could pull it off this second belt, because the first belt is being used potentially in its entirety there. The second belt, I would just need to put a splitter before it to make sure it's topped up. So anyway, that's the sort of performance tuning I've been doing. Green belts, yeah. So I needed a blue line of green belts to keep everything going. But if you remember, I had this build which was consuming a red line of iron and a blue of copper. So it was producing a red line of greens. The fix for this is beacons, basically. So I've put productivity mods in the green circuit makers, and then I've beaconed them up with speed mods. And the effect of this is that this is running at -10 crafting speed, but +40 productivity. And that combination is enough to nearly fill a blue belt. So we've gone from filling a red belt to nearly filling a blue belt. And that provides sufficient green circuits. Right, once I upgraded the green circuits, the red circuits ran dry. Sod's law, isn't it? So I upgraded the red circuit belt to blue, which helped. Because things are drawing off lanes unevenly, particularly with the sort of side loading, it was at one point had the capacity on a red belt to deal with what I wanted, but didn't have the capacity on the left or the right lane of it. So upgrading to blue fixed that. Or I could have done a lane balance partway down the bus, but they take up space. So I upgraded all this to blue, and to make that work, we ended up needing to beacon the red build. Now, there was no space in this because this was not designed for beaconing. So these beacons here hit 3 machines. Bit of a waste, but it works. These beacons on the side hit 6 machines. So they hit 3 reds and they hit some other stuff. So we hit 3 reds with the beacon over here. We hit 3 over here. So that allows us to put 4 productivity mods into the outside and inside lane of red makers. There's no beacon which will hit this middle one. So what happens is it has 1 speed and 3 productivity modules in it. That's enough to make this work. Okay, so we're now producing a capacity lane of red belts. It's actually as much as the blue belt can handle. So we could see where this is backing up. So I've got some red belt here. So if I wanted to guarantee more throughput, I would extend the red belt further down. But basically we're producing sufficient red circuits now that everything is backed up on red. Okay, and we can see this split red-green for making the rocket control units is backed up. This speed module 1 for the gold science is backed up. Right. Now, no doubt, once I fix this copper, we'll find that there aren't actually quite enough reds once this line is pulling. But copper's the next thing to have a look at. So it's just a game of going around and around in circles, finding the bottleneck and fixing it. The blue circuit build produces enough blue circuits. It's enough to both run the research and to build level 3 modules. The level 3 module making area, I don't know if you're like me, but when you first set up module making, the first thing you want is modules for power armor. Then you want modules for probably for productivity, and then afterwards you start turning on the speed. And you can control this by manually cutting belts, basically, but that's a real pain. So what I've done here is set up a combinator, and the combinator says how many of the modules I would like in the logistics network. So this is set to 100 speed, 5 productivity, 5 efficiency. So you'd probably set that up initially with 505, or whichever the appropriate one is for making power armor. When you were finished with making the power armor, you'd click on this and set it to what you needed for producing modules for your factory. Let's just trim that back. There we are. The way this works is each of these module setups. Oh, by the way, I've not balanced the build on this, so I've got 2 level 2 makers feeding a single level 3 maker, so that's not balanced, but it works, right? The way this works is that the level 1 assembly machine eats green circuits. So this is wired to a condition saying enable when you have a negative number of level 3s being sent through the wire. Then the wire is pushed all the way through, so these are only inserting greens when the number of level 3s is below 0. So we take our ideal number from this constant combinator, we then stick it through this, which takes each and multiplies by -1. So if our target is 50, we'd end up with -50 of that thing being output here. Then you take that -50 and using this roboport set to read logistics network content, you then find out how many of these items are in the logistics network. So logistics minus target, if the number's negative, you need to make more. And that's really simple. By locking it at the green circuits, you can turn off tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3 production all at once. And it's just a really neat way of preventing yourself buffering up level 2s and level 3s when you don't want them. Okay, once the level 3s are made, they get put into a provider chest, and obviously once something is in a provider chest, it counts towards the logistics network content. So the only other thing to show is that the drones are controlled in a similar way. So again, my factories go through phases where I want different numbers of drones. Initially, you want your 50 construction bots for your personal use. I always end up needing to control things by the number of available bots rather than the total number of bots. So the way this works is these provider chests have a single stack in, and that means that I can request a stack's worth, and they'll just be there. Then these are hooked up to insert into the roboport here. And it's all wired up. So again, this is set to read the available logistics bots. So the previous one was reading the network of the logistics network. This is reading number of bots. So that produces X, Y, Z, Y as outputs. X is the available logistics bots. So I run a wire from here to this arithmetic combinator. I take X, I multiply it by -1, and output that as logistic bots. So if there are 100 logistics bots in the network, we'll get an output of -100 here. Then this constant combinator says what I would like in the network. So it's outputting 70 logistics and 50 construction bots here. So it would subtract that 100 from the 70, get -30, and then this is set to only insert when the logistics bots is greater than 0. That means that I want more available logistics bots in the network than there are currently available. So this will then buffer up towards that from its 50, and of course from its 50. This is then going to start filling up the chest again with newly manufactured ones. You can make this even smarter. You can add a third condition, which, for example, takes your target number plus 50, some buffer, and says whenever the number of items whenever the number of available drones exceeds your target plus 50, activate an inserter which takes out drones from this roboport. You then put that into a chest, buffer chest, or some sort of box-to-box with inserters, shenanigans, and that would let you take out excess drones and make them available to the wider logistics network. Anyway, that's pretty much how I've done this. So it's just run over here and reset this when I want to reset what drones I want to use. So I haven't yet plumbed in fluids. That's the next big job. There's going to have to be a fluid bus, which I think is going to go onto this middle track. This middle track is what used to be the bottom of the main bus, but it's now in the middle of this combined main bus and circuits bus. Okay, so that's pretty much it. As I said, I'm doing follow a robot count at the moment, one after the other, because that uses the entire factory. It's the only research I could see which uses all 7 potions. So there you are. It doesn't end up using very many of the labs. So if I do artillery range, that uses a lot more of the labs. It's probably just something with timings and how long it takes to research. But it does keep all these things running very nicely. So that's it really. Again, I've tried to use the slowest belts possible to feed things. So module making, so we only need 1 yellow belt of reds to feed the blue circuit making, even though I have this quite humongous blue circuit array, and so on and so on. The real guzzler here is the iron and copper plates. Well, enjoy. There's nothing really else to show here. Oh, the only other thing I did was flip the copper versus iron plates on the circuits bus. The reason for this is that in early game, I'm going to be setting up just a handful of smelters. So there's going to be some iron here, and then copper, and then steel, and then brick. So I'd kind of like to literally put the smelters down in that order. It's probably not quite practical, so I'll probably end up doing steel, brick, then iron and copper. But then it allows me to do a whole run of coppers next to each other, and then go back to doing iron later on. So rather than having a single copper in amongst a whole load of iron. It just seemed kind of neater to do it this way. And also, I wasn't quite sure if I would need additional iron as I grew the build at the bottom. It turns out I don't need to. But, you know, that was something I learned. So I left room here so that we could put in an extra iron lane without causing shenanigans. So I think what I'm going to do next is fix this so that it is pulling material off one of these copper here. See if that fixes the copper in research problem. Do we still have it? Yes, we still have that. If not, I'm going to run a second line of copper in the... I think the best thing is just to run a second line of copper in this bus. Yeah, that's probably what I'll do. Anyway, that's the plan. So I'm going to run... There we are. And then I'll do all the necessary balancing stuff to make this behave. So that's the next bit of the game. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you're enjoying watching this incremental fixing up of this plan. So to come is the uranium area and the remaining military. And then I think I'm ready to cut this up into tiled blueprints and actually try this out on a vanilla world. I'll turn off all my mods and see if it is possible to actually go from 0 to this without making a huge mess of everything. Thank you very much for watching and have fun playing Factorio.